Hey guys, welcome to our podcast where it has to be said. My name is Elvis.
And I'm Denise.
Babe, let's talk.
So dramatic.
How you feeling? How you doing? What's going on?
I'm feeling good.
Good, good. You look good. You smiling a lot. I see you have a lot of papers going on there. I brought
always have
nothing as
papers.
usual.
I'm tired, but it's not your fault.
I gotta push you sometimes to record,
Yeah, okay. Again, back to what we said in the last episode. Technical difficulties, my fault. Actually recording, it's his fault.
Oh, and we recorded last week and this week.
But here we
We're
are.
doing pretty good.
For the first time,
For the first time.
I will give Elvis credit that he was like, let's continue expanding the conversation we had last week. So that's somewhat of his input or an idea for one of the
You look so
episodes.
happy saying that. It's almost like I impressed you with that, but go ahead.
It is, because it's not that I'm drastically impressed. Impressed I would be would be like, yo, ma, I got information and here are the notes or whatever. I'll be impressed in that. But
I can't spoil you. I can't give you everything.
coming up with things to talk. You know what I think it is? Narrowing down the things to talk about, because you can talk about anything.
No, and I feel like we have so much to talk about, especially when we sit down and talk. We can just talk about this and that, and we just keep on jumping from topics to topics.
Yeah.
And I feel like if we're gonna emphasize on one topic, whether it be in one episode, a series, or different times, I feel like we should just focus on that and get as much information as we can.
Yeah?
Yeah. You feel the energy, right?
Yeah, okay. Anyways. So, but what made you want to talk about it? Because you presented a actual example of like what kind of stirred up. Because we talked last week about parenting styles.
First of all, last week, yes, we had a boo-boo where half of it was on the camera, half of it wasn't. But that's for the first time after a year of recording, you said, because every time we finish, this is what you guys don't see. Every time we finish recording, it was okay. It was good. It was all right. We could have done better. All this. It's always something that comes from that chair. And this was the first time that we finished recording and you said, what?
That was excellent.
That has never happened.
No.
And for her to say it was excellent and for me to go behind the camera and for the camera to be off, I said, babe, they know how we look. Let's just put it the way it is. And we're still amateurs. We're still learning.
Yeah.
And
because if you re-record, it doesn't come out in the same way. Because that happened with Hades' episode.
that happened a whole bunch of times.
But with Hades' episode, it was so good the first time.
Yeah.
And then we had to re-record. So it kind of throws off a little bit the flow, even though that's one of still my favorite episodes. She's one of my favorite
No,
guests.
we try to keep this as natural as possible, meaning we don't really edit much. If we do, we edit the first part, which is me walking from the camera to here.
But I think in part it's because we're not at that
level. We're not at that level, and you don't got time for that.
Knowing how to edit.
Yeah.
I wish I could add stuff, even like a clapping hand or something, but I'm just like,
so even the people that we sit down with and talk, they're like, okay, so what's the script? There's no script. We sit here and we say your story, or we talk about what you've been through in life, right? You're the one that knows what what you gain out of your life experience ultimately. So we find value in that. I feel like anybody that does listen to us is gonna find value and whatever experience anybody that's sitting down here could talk about.
Yeah. So with that said, if you haven't seen last week's episode or listened to it, do it, because it kind of correlates to today's theme. We spoke about parenting styles, and even if you're not a parent, one way or another, of a parent, you're around parents, you're around teens or kids, whatever it is, depending where you work. It's important information to know, and it's good things to kind of think about and consider when you are coming into a relationship and are having, planning to have children. And it's like, what kind of parent do I want to be, right? Because if your partner doesn't kind of match or complement the type of parent you're trying to be, then that's going to bring other conflicts within the relationship in the household.
That's a different topic. Even
no, I know, but I'm saying it's important to hear this stuff.
Yeah, even when you're dating, like if these are not conversations that you're having with your boyfriend or girlfriend, like, hey, listen, this is the way I want to do it. he probably doesn't want no kids, or she probably doesn't want no
Mm-hmm.
kids, right? So it's like you don't want to wait so long on that, 5, 10 years being boyfriend and girlfriend, and then you realize that the person that you're with doesn't necessarily have the same goals and aspirations as you do.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And doesn't have the same life experiences that kind of affect or influence the type of parent they want to be.
Absolutely.
So,
Yes.
which all that unfolds as it happens, right?
Just don't wait too long. You imagine 10 years on and no. That's, yeah.
I mean, to each their own, but you waited 10 years basically to have the second kid.
Yeah, but I already had a kid with you. So it's like, yeah, I did. You see, now she's like revealing herself. So
Yeah.
go ahead, babe.
I don't even know
What
why I
else?
didn't want to have a second child, but why it took that long.
It's
But
okay. It came at perfect time. Because
yeah.
imagine we would have had Alina like 3 or 4 years beforehand. And she would have been older now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
And it would have been a lot of things a lot more difficult too.
I guess. Yes and no. But you know what? Ultimately, God knows
But we're here.
everything happens for a
We're
reason.
here and everything's good. Yeah.
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 Oh, how are you feeling? I didn't ask how you were feeling.
It's all right. They realized that. They gotta
Did
see that.
not
They gotta put the
realize
emojis, comment the emojis and stuff like that.
Anyways, half of the time he's all show anyway. So, anyways, focusing to our topic, right? One of the things that you asked me when I came home for lunch today, so nice to like be able to do that. Anyways, was like,
And I cooked for you. Did you say all of
yes,
that? I
he
grilled
did.
some
Pork chops.
Even it was cold, I took out the grill and let's make it happen.
I didn't ask him. He wanted to, so because you make it seem like I made you go out to pasar frío. But anyways, so he brought up the idea of like what is normal.
Yeah, but keep on talking about it.
Oh, you want me to keep talking about it?
What is normal? Normal what? What are we talking about? Explain.
Like, you're right.
Yeah, what's normal? I don't know. This is a normal conversation.
With regards to what are...
See, I would have edited this if I knew how to edit.
What are normal...
But I feel like we should just keep it the way we do it.
Up. What are like normal...
This is not normal. This is not normal, guys.
Teen behaviors, So like by definition, normal is something that is like conforming to standards. Is something usual, typical, or expected, right? So when it comes to children and teens, it really comes down to us understanding what is normal development.
Well, part of that, just going back a little bit so they can understand what you're talking about, because I don't think they understand what you're talking about. You were talking about last week, or we were talking about last week of
parenting styles.
Yes, well, not only that, but the kids nowadays, like they're so exposed to so.
You see, this is why I was reverting back to you.
Hey, but let me finish. You already said I gave you a chance, and you didn't dunk it. You like threw it. Yeah, I got you. She's lost, and she got all the notes and everything. It's okay. It's okay. We're here, babe. This is what has to be said, and we have a dialogue.
All right.
Okay. So she was talking about this last week, and it was about teenagers or even kids at a young age. They get exposed to age. They get exposed. We get exposed to so many different things. So I think from there, I kind of started
the conversation.
Yeah, started a conversation.
Yes, because I shared the reel today about my theory is that what we were doing at teens, they're doing now, like in even earlier stages.
Yeah. At that age, I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't watching TV as much. I didn't have a phone.
Well, there were no phones at that time.
Exactly. So it was a different lifestyle. We were playing hide and go seek, and I mean, I was throwing rocks too at cars, but that was just me in Puerto Rico. But we were doing different things. It was completely different to what the norm is now, right? There was no smoking or drinking. That wasn't something normal for me.
Yeah, I mean, there were teens that would do it, right? Like I remember even...
There wasn't much of an interest.
I remember even in middle school, I knew of kids that did it, and even high school, and I
think high school is really one.
In middle school, I knew of maybe like one person that maybe was pregnant, but they went like hiatus for a little bit. Mm-hmm. So it was there, but it wasn't as prominent as it is now.
Now, yeah.
Like
it's so normal now. It's almost like
they're
like smoking.
Like
they're drinking. Yeah. Oh yeah, they're having sex. Oh yeah, they're
it's
watching
scary.
porn. Oh yeah, They got a magazine. It's so normalized now.
Yeah.
That I think that's the scary part. That where do we define the line where listen, that's not normal. You need help. Oh, we need to address this. Oh, we need to have a conversation about this, right? Because then comes the fact like, oh, you can't say things wrong that way, or you're rejecting them, or you shouldn't do that. You're marking them, or you should accept them the way they are. Yeah, I was joking today with Denise. I was like, no, what if she identifies herself as being a dirty person? You know, she doesn't got a
To
shower.
not-
Yeah, right. You were like, oh, you got to take a shower. I said, no, she don't got to take a shower. What if she identifies herself as a dirty person? So it's like, and that was just me joking around, but that's the society we're living in nowadays,
Mhm.
where it's like you can't even. I can't give you information of how I see the world view, right? Because if not, people automatically are gonna, oh no, you hurt my feelings, or you shouldn't do that, or I'm
Mhm.
marking people, I'm judging you. No, this is the way I see it, right?
Yeah.
And we could agree to disagree. But if you're my kid, right, or if your family, if your friend, I'm gonna try to push as much as I can to really get you in the right path, right? It's
Mhm.
almost like cancer, right? If you had the solution to solve cancer, to heal cancer, you would want to give it to those around you first before everybody else. And not that this is cancer, but it is bad. A lot of things that are happening nowadays is just bad. And if we don't educate our kids and the people around us of what's right and what's wrong, I mean, who's gonna do it?
It's interesting analogy, but um it's so sad almost how how opened to these things teens and kids are. Like I want to say last year, because I was working with youth that were at risk of trafficking and like being sexually exploited, and I still owe the episode because a lot of people wanted more information on that.
Mm-hmm.
um I want to say maybe,
A next week episode, we should talk
I
about
don't
that.
know, I want to say, I'm gonna give a guesstimate, maybe out of the 65 kids I interviewed, right, last year, there was maybe 10 that had not been sexually active
It's crazy.
by choice, right? And I'm not talking about those who've experienced some form of sexual assault or molestation. I'm talking about by choice to consent to have sex. And this is range from ages like 12 to 16, like very young. Most of them were younger than 16. And I think it was sad because you're growing up so fast, right? Having sex opens doors to so many other things
Yes.
and other issues and complications that teenagers don't really need to have more of,
Yeah.
right? They already have enough pressure of things, right? So I think that's one of the points of like what is normal, right? What age is it appropriate to like have sex? I know certain states have different laws about
And we
age
don't
of consent.
And we don't even have this conversation with our kids, man. Like we should really have like we talk we talk to Elenise all the
I
time
think we talked
about
too much, and she
yeah.
was like,
Yeah, but think about it. You said it correctly, right? You said they're going through enough as it is at that age and
"Mm-hmm,
time, right? And I know for a fact that one of the pressures they do get is a lot of them is like, well, I kissed already. Oh, you haven't kissed? And then the bullying comes, right? Oh, I had sex. Oh, you haven't had sex? Oh, nobody touched you down there? Oh, you haven't sent nudes? So all of these different stuff in that particular age, everybody's pushing each other, not necessarily because that's the right thing to do, but once one of them in the actual group does something like
yeah."
that, they're like, I don't want to be the only one that has done this. So let me push everybody else in the group to do it as well.
Yeah.
So,
But it's also part of, so like when it comes to the question of what is normal, it's also part of normal development,
hmm
scientifically and in psychology, that risk taking and kind of wanting to experiment, right? So this is the age when they start, unfortunately, do start initiating some sexual activity, right? Because they're biologically starting to feel
hmm
things.
hmm
Certain things start to awaken in them that it does kind of, that's when they have some interest. And that's why we need to have these conversations with them so they can be educated,
hmm
right? Um, and I had I spoke with a coworker not too long ago, and she talked about like having that conversation with her kids. And, one point that she made was, if you're still getting like giddy and you're not even able to say the word sex or penis or vagina, then maybe you should not be doing it, right? Like if you're still getting like, oh, I don't want to say it. So you want to do the grown thing, but you don't want to talk about the grown thing. Like,
Yeah, that doesn't make sense at
you
all.
know, but I think also if you're not able to back up the consequences of what come with it, then you shouldn't be doing it either, right? And for me, for example, for us, obviously, was when I became pregnant at 17. What did I expect was going to happen? Is either you can get an STI or you get pregnant if you don't protect yourself, right? And for me, and this is personal choice, this is not me advertising anything, but for me, it was like when I sat in that, clinic and they're like, well, you have options, in my head or automatically, I'm like, no, I don't, because this was a decision I made. No one forced me.
And these are the consequences
These
of
were the
what my choices.
consequences, and I'm gonna have to own up to it and do what it takes as a mom. And I feel like if you are not willing to do that, you shouldn't do it, because regardless, whatever your opinion is of pro-life or pro-abortion or pro-choice, whatever your opinion is, I feel like it's unfair, because I've also met kids who have had multiple abortions, right? And biologically and physically, you're affecting your own body by having excessive procedures.
Yeah, and then later
So
on,
at
you
what
don't know.
point is it that you learning from your choice? Like, once, okay, you didn't know better and you made the decision, but now you're having up to 3 or 4 abortions.
Yeah.
Like, be responsible if you're gonna do these things. If you want to do things that are like adult, like, you have to be responsible. And that's my only blurb, but that wasn't even planned. But
No, but even later on, the consequences are you don't know if those people want to have kids, and
then they can't.
and then they can't because of so many times, going through that whole entire process. Because truly, there's a lot of consequences when it comes to that.
So, and that's something that people don't talk about often, because we want to normalize sex. Oh, it's okay to feel those things, okay to do those things. But no, doing those things comes with said consequences. The same thing with even pornography, right? They are going to want to test, right? And, they are going to want to look at things, or things are going to pop up on their phones and things. But what happens is that no one talks about, for girls, it decreases their self-esteem and increases their anxiety and depression. For boys, too much pornography increases their aggressive behaviors. So there's effects to the things we do, right? Too much of something, too much of even a good thing, becomes a bad thing.
No, and I feel like you would also get very addictive easily, especially as a man or as a young guy.
Or
you
a girl.
you would definitely get addicted. Not only that, but those images stay in your mind for a long time. So you're gonna sexualize everything. So when you do finally find a partner, right? You get married and you want to have sex. If you have all those images in your head, you're thinking more about sex versus having a connection with my spouse, right? It's a little bit different. So I feel like don't open that door. That's gonna lead you to worse things.
Yeah, and again, it's kind of educating our kids about these things, right? Of the long
But
term.
what's porn, right? Because you look at Instagram or even YouTube or any of that stuff, and you see everybody like in bathing suits and twerking, all that crazy stuff. Not always, but what I'm saying is it's always popping up here and there.
Yeah.
So it's like, or even the conversation we had, OnlyFans, right? How many people you have in OnlyFans? You have over 1 million people in OnlyFans, and that's not considered porn. That's why I'm saying like everything is just getting so normalized. I think one of the podcasts we were listening to, one of the videos I was listening to, I was saying, oh, prostitution has become normalized as well, because you get some people will see OnlyFans as prostitution, right? And I'm not for or against anything. I'm not trying to get involved in that
there's
side.
An exchange.
But
there is an exchange.
There is like, man, like where is the line of let's limit this, right? And we're the ones, even as guys, right? Because I will say 95% of it is guys funding OnlyFans pages, right? If all these guys would be like, listen, we're not gonna pay any more memberships, we're not gonna do any more for this, that page would be shut down. But
Yeah.
we're consuming the bad stuff.
Yep.
And unfortunately, we live in a society that has been stuck like that. Like, look, we're sitting down here talking about good stuff, about blessing, about family, about growth. We see 350, 60, 100, at most 100 views in our videos. I'm not saying everybody look at our videos, but there's other videos of a chicken making some videos.
I be looking at that.
Yeah, and
on
you
a
see
TikTok.
thousands. Nothing against a chicken because I like my chicken, but and you see crazy amount of views, and there's nothing wrong with the chicken again. But my point is, what is gonna give you or what you're gonna gain more information out of? Somebody sitting down on a podcast talking to you about what marriage is, what is to be a father at a young age, what is it to be a mother at a young age. Oh, look at that chicken.
I'm thinking
Dancing.
of the chicken.
You think about the chicken, right?
I be showing him because they pop up in my For You page.
Delina be watching all that stuff too.
Oh, those chickens. So, you know, we got to understand what is normal when it comes to sex and social media, right? Phone use, right? Even with social media, right? Too much of it, right? Is not a good thing.
It gives you like anxiety and all of that. And listen, I'm one of them to sometimes be too much in social media because I start looking for car parts.
I don't think just on the social media. I think on the phone in general. It's not always that you're on Instagram necessarily and Facebook.
I'm barely on Instagram. It's mainly like car pages and stuff like that. Yeah, to learn. YouTube is like my educational side of car parts and how to dismantle a car and put it back together and those type of stuff. And I feel like you're absolutely right. That's something, especially think about it. If you're at the end of your night, right, and you're looking at how to put this all together back, and you're almost like 15 minutes in, but you know it's already 12 o'clock and you gotta go to sleep. You're like, wait a second, I finished the video, but then I go to sleep too late. And then, but if I don't finish the video, I'm gonna be thinking about it all night, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna be thinking in my head, wait, how do I finalize this puzzle? So I think that, and before we were doing this, we should get back at this. Leaving the phone like an hour before going to sleep. And I think we should both do this. You know, you and me, you see that? You and me should do that.
He always wants to put me into something
No, I said
when
you
he thinks it's a great idea.
No. I said you and me.
So, but anyways, phone use is also something that becomes, it's like what is normal, right? Like you see like little memes and pictures now of like, family photos and it's everyone on the phone, right? Like,
yeah.
And it's crazy how much we are controlled by these things, right? And that's really, I think, what it comes down to when you're measuring and trying to determine what behaviors are normal and abnormal or not as normal, is really seeing how much control it has over you.
Yeah.
Right? Is sex something that is too much control over me? Like, is this all I think about? Is this all I need to do? It? I can't focus on anything else without this. And then that's when it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
Right? The same thing with the phone use, right? The same thing with substance use, right? Most kids, right, are put in a position where they're either exposed, either by influence, whatever, to some type of substance before the age of 21, right? So the concern then becomes what is not normal is when you have teens or even kids binge drinking, using drugs as a way to cope, right? Because ultimately what happens is that this becomes learned behavior and patterns that you carry on, right? No one becomes an alcoholic or a drug addict by the first time. Well, there's some situations and certain substances that yes, it happens, but it usually becomes habitual, something you've been doing repeatedly, right? And then that part is not normal, right? That maybe a kid is going to be exposed to it. Now, all these kids, almost all the kids I interviewed that I mentioned earlier, almost all of them tried vaping. Almost all of them. There was maybe like 5 that didn't try any substance. And I'm like, yo, this is crazy. Like, it's just so normal. They be having like 20 types of different vapes. I don't know. They don't have money for nothing, but they have money for the vapes. But anyway,
it's like they want to be just part of the cult, the group of this is what's cool. This is and I feel like we all been through that, right? Because at my age, that we were always trying to do something and be with all the girls, and that was a boy stuff, right? That's what you're supposed to do. But again, what is normal, right? Because we were doing stuff that wasn't affecting anybody, right? Because the smoking, you're gonna have consequences long term. They may not see it now, but vaping, you start now and you keep on doing it. You're just going downhill.
Yeah, because eventually those certain drugs don't do anything for you, and then you tackle into other things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's when it's kind of like, that's how you know when it's becoming an issue, right? When you see the dependency and how they use that to cope with maybe other mental health issues and other things,
Mm-hmm.
um, instead of using, practical ways to cope and regulate their emotions, right?
No, and how we talk about all these different things with our kids,
But you know what?
because
The TV doesn't help. Like, even TV shows we watch now of like, well, I think since even before, because Degrassi, it had all types of stuff. But
that was our show back in the
I
day.
know. But like, even like on my block, right?
Yeah.
They're selling drugs, they're having sex. There's some other show. Oh, like the show I was watching too, even with Ellie, Never Have I Ever. The whole point of her is her like beasting to lose her virginity.
Yeah,
Like,
everything has been normalized. It's just like I feel like now you could see a lot better. I think as an adult as well,
yeah.
you could kind of see it, and it's almost like when we were younger, we didn't see anything wrong with it. But now your kids are going through it, right? And obviously they have a little bit more exposure due to the internet and whatnot.
It's that you see so
And
many acting out
but
on it.
how do we react to that, right?
Yeah.
How do we address the situation without affecting them, right? Because I mean, somebody doing it completely wrong could be, oh, like, oh, you idiot, what are you doing and stuff like that, right? And I feel like a lot of people do that, like bring their kids down, and I call myself sometimes just bringing Ellie down at the very long time ago, and
Hmm.
just bringing her down, which you shouldn't ultimately, right?
Yeah.
And you should reflect of what words of wisdom are you going to give to your kids, right? Because you have that one chance. um I had a perfect example right now when we got an email, right?
Hmm.
Things weren't too good in school and whatnot,
Well,
and
too good.
it wasn't bad. But put it this way, we got an email. I don't like getting emails, a teacher, right? So I asked her, Ellie, so we got this email, what you want me to do? Should we discipline you? Should we take away your phone? Should you not participate in this? Should you not do that, right? Because I could have been like, I got an email, and what you doing? You acted right, but I felt like that wasn't the right approach to go,
Hmm.
and she was like, I don't know, I don't know. I said, but what did you learn out of this? Like, you're gonna do better? Is there gonna be a change,
Hmm.
right? Because you can answer me right now, oh, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, but if you don't do anything, I'm just gonna get an email again,
Hmm.
and our conversation is gonna be different. I mean, I'm not gonna go crazy, but again, you got to give those words of encouragement. Like, man, you're smart. I shouldn't be getting these emails. I should be getting emails that you're an amazing student, that you're moving forward, that you're overachieving all your goals, that they're looking to increase you to another, right? Like just
Hmm.
speaking words of life upon them. If we don't do that,
Yeah.
nobody else is gonna do it.
And also conversing as to like what is going on or what is the
Yeah, what's
issue,
going
right?
on in your
Especially
life?
when it comes to like grades. It's like, is it that they're not understanding the material, or is it they have too much? For like Ellie right now, it's really her learning the balance
Yeah.
of cheer and school, right? Because
Now,
cheer,
not only that, but I feel like math or other subjects in the past was not as difficult, so she didn't have to
try as
study
much, yeah.
as much. So obviously, as it's gonna get harder, and that's what I
Hmm.
was telling her. I said, "Baby, but you didn't need to study as much before, but things are gonna get harder because they're gonna come with new different equations that you didn't even know about. So, what could you do to be ahead of learning how to do it?"
Yeah, but it's also balancing because she's getting home some days at 8 o'clock, maybe two or three times out of the week. It's us as an adult that we come home after work and we're like, we don't really want to do much. So
Mm-hmm.
imagine them that they're younger and they want to do a lot less,
Yeah.
right? So that's also like normal too, like fluctuating in grades, a change in interest in academics, right? What becomes abnormal is when there's like a drastic shift, right? Like let's say they were straight A's and all of a sudden they don't
They
want to
drop.
go to school,
Yeah.
they drop completely, they have no interest. Then it's kind of like what's going on, right? So those are, and I think the question of what is normal is more relative to you and your family, right? Understanding what is acceptable in your home
Mm-hmm.
versus what is not acceptable in your home, regardless of what outside those doors society may say,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like for me, Ellie's school doesn't have dress code now. Does that mean I want her in crop tops 24/7? No, I don't. I don't feel like she should be wearing crop
But you know the
tops.
crazy part about that, right? That for us, normal is not having crop top all the time. But for her reality and her
Everyone
truth,
wears it.
everybody has that. So it's
Yeah.
almost like for her, it's like, wow, so I'm the person that is not normal because everybody else is normal. Everybody else has it.
Yep.
So we got to understand where they're coming from as
Mm-hmm.
well. And it's be like, listen, I know you probably will look different. I know that you're probably not going to be like
Yep.
everybody else. But this is what we believe in. And this is, I'm not saying you believe, but you respect what this household believes,
Yeah.
right? And you are a representation of this house as well. So I always tell her that, always.
Yeah. And it ultimately, that's part of the parenting style, right? Being the, is it authoritarian? I think so. Where you set your boundaries, then what they choose to do after, that's on them,
Yeah, it's
right?
on
If
them.
I'm saying I'm not okay with crop tops, if you choose to outside the doors fold it up, then
Tie
that's
it
on
up,
you.
yeah, but
That's
not,
not
yeah.
that's a you problem, not me. That I already told you how I feel about that, right? Or if I told you, educate you about substances, about sex, and then you make the decision after, hopefully you converse with me after to give you
Mm-hmm.
proper guidance. But if not, then that's a decision you then take. I've done, we've done everything we could
Mm-hmm.
in expressing that, right? So ultimately, it's just kind of like measuring what works. It kind of ties down to what works for you and your family,
Mm-hmm.
right? But also abiding by certain limitations, right? Like for example, I mean, I've haven't well, there is some parents that are like, oh yeah, I don't mind my kid having sex, right?
Mm-hmm.
To each their own, but also knowing that in your state there's statutes and laws that say, okay, this is the age of consent. So if your kid is not in that age, you shouldn't be broadcasting what they're,
Yeah,
what they're doing or not
and even
doing.
if they accept it, I mean, you don't want to open a can of worms that is going to take you to worse. As a female, as it is, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, you guys are exposed to having some type of sexual abuse a higher chance than a guy, right? Or am I wrong?
No, with men, it's that male is that it's underreported.
So they don't even report it.
A lot of guys, a lot of boys and men do
So
not
this is
report
happening.
sexual
So
assault.
this is happening on both sides.
Yes. Are
That's
you talking about my job?
Yeah, I am.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah. In
Or even in general, listen, if you
in
was to say,
general.
look, if you was to say in a group of let's just say a group of friends and relatives and all these kids within the same age group, let's just say 8 to 15, right? And you was to have a conversation, I don't know, like if you're giving a conference or something like that, and you're talking about sexual abuse
I
or
think it's 1 in 5 now.
have you ever been touched in an
Hmm.
appropriate way and this and that, it's crazy how the percentage is so high for females, but let's just say guys as well, how much it happens not only outside, but it happens a lot more within families, right? An
Yes.
uncle, a cousin, a nearby neighbor. So you exposing in your house where they could have sex and they're already like close to this could happen to you at any particular moment, right?
Yeah.
And it's crazy because it's very normalized where a lot of these kids have been exposed to this, and that's why they become addictive of sex, of porn, of all type of stuff. Or
Or
sometimes they don't
substance
even want to
use.
leave
Or
live.
substance use because of coping with the trauma. So trauma does have an impact to kind of altering what is normal,
Hmm.
right? Because the reality is, and it's a whole nother episode and concept, but the reality is that there are developmental stages that you're experiencing from childhood into adulthood,
Hmm.
and trauma kind of impacts that development. So sometimes some kids' development stops the moment they experience trauma. So
Mm.
the more complex and the more often they're experiencing trauma, like re-experiencing, it kind of impacts their development cognitively, emotionally, physically. There's so many effects from it. So that does have an impact in defining what is normal, because they might have to undo what they learned
Yeah.
that was normal, right? Like incest or abuse at home,
Hmm.
that's not normal, that's not appropriate, and
Hmm.
then you have to then kind of learn to undo all that. Like for me now with a lot of my clients in therapy, is really us undoing what they experienced in their childhood now that they're adults and becoming their own independent selves. Um,
It's so crazy how much your childhood could have an effect on who you become later on.
yep.
So our responsibility as parents is to be present. It's not to say no or let me discipline you. No, it's about to teach them wisdom. It's about to teach them this is the path, but you also have a choice. Either you make the right one or you make the wrong one. But ultimately, they both lead to different consequences.
Yes.
You're either going to have good consequences or bad consequences. Whether your consequences ended up good or bad, I can remember that papi and mommy told me what to do. So ultimately, that's what we have to do. And not only when they're little kids, but I think even as young adults, they're
Mm-hmm.
always going to want to come to you if you were always there, right? Because they
Yeah.
want to be like, I want to hear some time of words of wisdom. And I know from papi and mommy, I'm going to be able to hear it.
Mm-hmm. But I think also a key point, and I share this a lot with like the teens I work with that have experienced some form of abuse,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's been their choice, right? Because like whether they've went to the wrong place, wrong time, or hung out with the wrong person. Sometimes parents fall in the trap of like, oh well, who told you why you went out with this person? Why, kind of the blaming. The reality is that bad things can still happen
Mm-hmm.
to good people doing the right thing. Bad things can still happen,
Absolutely.
right? So also keeping that in mind when you're having these conversations, because sometimes then it becomes, well, I did everything mom and dad told me to do, or mom told me to look, or XYZ told me to do, and look where I am now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like having the conversations that really ultimately anything can happen,
Mm-hmm.
but what you're in control of is what you do, how you respond, what you react to, and how you feel.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else you can't control.
This is a good talk, babe.
It was. And I want to close out with a Bible verse. It's 1 Corinthians 6:12. I love it. I always know it in Spanish, but in English it says, all things are lawful for me, but all things are not helpful. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be brought under the power of any. Meaning, right? And this is leading into the discussion of sexual immorality. But the reality is that everything might be available to you,
Mm-hmm.
but it might not be beneficial for you, right? And everything may be available to you, and it's in standard to what the world says, but none of these things I should be under the power of.
Mm-hmm.
I should have the self-discipline and the self-control. I shouldn't let these things, these behaviors dominate who I am.
Good talk, babe.
It was a good talk. It had to be said.
And it was said. Take care, guys.